The abandoned hospital that still has patients. They said the building was empty. That it had been empty for over 20 years. Windows boarded. Power cut. Doors chained. A condemned structure rotting on the edge of a forgotten town in upstate New York, surrounded by weeds, rusted fences, and silence. But the 911 call logs told a different story. Every few months, usually after midnight, someone would call from inside the hospital. Not prank calls. Not static. Real voices. Whispering. Crying. Begging. My floor is empty. The pain won't stop. Is the doctor coming back? And sometimes, just screaming. The calls always came from the same number. A landline that had been disconnected since 2003. Dispatch would send patrol cars. Paramedics. Fire units. They would find the gates locked. The halls dark. No electricity. No heat. No patients. No one. Yet the calls kept coming. And then, one night, a voice on the line said something different. It said a name. My name. That's why I'm telling this story. Because I went inside that hospital. And I learned the truth. The patients never left. They were never discharged. They never died. They were still waiting. The hospital was called St. Maro's Medical Center. Built in the 1940s, it had once been the pride of the region. A sprawling complex of brick wings and long corridors, perched on a hill overlooking a river that cut through thick forest. Generations were born there. Generations died there. Then came the scandal. Unlicensed experiments. Unauthorized drug trials. Patients used as test subjects without consent. Terminal cases. Psychiatric cases. People without families. People who wouldn't be missed. When the truth finally surfaced, the hospital was shut down overnight. Doctors disappeared. Records vanished. Lawsuits were buried in settlements and silence. Officially, everyone had been transferred. Unofficially, some never made it out. The night I went there, fog covered the ground like a low white ocean. The moon was a pale blur behind clouds. My flashlight beam cut a narrow tunnel through the darkness as I stood before the rusted gate. I'm a journalist. Investigative. I had been chasing the mystery of those emergency calls for months. Phone records. Old blueprints. Retired dispatchers who still remembered hearing voices crying through dead wires. One of them told me something that never left my mind. When the calls come in, she said, the background sounds like a hospital still working. Heart monitors. Oxygen machines. Footsteps. Like it never closed. That was impossible. And yet, the recordings existed. I pushed the gate open. It screamed. The sound echoed across the empty grounds, bouncing off the brick walls of buildings that hadn't heard human voices in decades. The front entrance doors were chained, but a side service door hung open, barely, as if someone had slipped through and never closed it behind them. Inside, the air was cold. Not just abandoned building cold. Clinical cold. The kind that preserves. My flashlight revealed peeling paint, wheelchairs tipped over, gurneys frozen in place like they had been left mid-emergency. Paper charts littered the floor, their ink faded but still readable. Patient names. Room numbers. Dates. The newest date I could find was from the year the hospital shut down. And yet, I heard something. A soft beeping. Slow. Steady. A heart monitor. Deep in the building. Still running. And then, a voice. Weak. Faint. Nurse? Not echo. Not imagination. A real human voice. From down the hall. That was the moment I realized the stories were wrong. The hospital wasn't abandoned. It was only forgotten. And the people inside had been waiting for someone to remember them. The beeping grew louder as I walked. Each step down the corridor felt like crossing a line I wouldn't be able to come back from. My flashlight trembled slightly in my hand, its beam sliding across doors labeled with faded numbers, 4 poles still standing beside them like silent guards. Room 214. The sound was coming from there. The door was half open. Inside, the smell hit me first, antiseptic, metal, and something old, something that had never fully left. The kind of smell that clings to hospitals no matter how many years pass. The heart monitor sat beside the bed, its screen glowing faint green in the darkness. Beep, beep, beep. And on the bed, a woman. Thin. Pale. Her skin stretched tight over bone, eyes sunken, hair gray and brittle against the pillow. Tubes ran into her arms. An oxygen mask covered her mouth. Her chest rose and fell slowly, painfully. She was alive. But she shouldn't have been. She turned her head toward the light, squinting as if waking from a long sleep. "Nurse?" she whispered. Her voice cracked like dry paper. I froze. I'm not a nurse," I said softly. "Do you know where you are?" She looked around the room, confusion washing over her face. "St. Marrow's," she said. "They said the trial was helping. They said the pain would stop." My blood went cold. "What year do you think it is?" I asked. She thought for a moment. 1998. I checked the dust on the floor, the peeling walls, the rust on the bed frame. It was 2026. She had been here for 28 years. I stepped closer. The floor bag above her was half empty, the liquid inside faintly glowing, as if refusing to decay. The machines around her hummed with impossible life. "You're not supposed to be here anymore," I whispered. Her eyes widened in fear. "They said I couldn't leave until the study was finished," she said. "They said the doctor would come back." A tear slid from the corner of her eye. He never did. Behind me, another sound echoed down the hallway. Wheels. A gurney rolling. Slow. Deliberate. And then another voice, distant but clear. "Patient in room 217 is crashing." Not a recording. Not an echo. A live hospital announcement. The abandoned hospital was still operating. Still treating patients. Still keeping them alive. And then I realized something far worse. The machines weren't keeping them alive. The building was. The corridor beyond her room opened into the main ward. Rows of beds stretched into darkness, separated by thin curtains that fluttered even though there was no wind. Some beds were empty. Some were not. Figures lay beneath the sheets, unmoving or softly shifting. 4 drips glowed. Heart monitors pulsed. Ventilators breathed. All of them connected to nothing. No power lines. No generators. No staff. Yet everything worked. At the far end of the ward, a shadow moved. A silhouette in a doctor's coat. Standing too still. Watching. And that was when the intercom crackled again, its voice distorted but unmistakably human. "Code blue. Code blue, patient refusing to die." Refusing. Not failing. Not flatlining. Refusing. The word echoed in my mind. This place was not a hospital anymore. It was a holding ground. A place that would not let its patients go. And something inside it was still playing doctor. The silhouette at the end of the ward began to move. Slowly. Smoothly. Too smoothly. Its footsteps made no sound on the tiled floor, yet the heart monitors around me began to accelerate, their beeping quickening as if sensing its presence. Curtains rustled as it passed, though no air moved. I could feel the temperature drop with every step it took closer. When it finally reached the edge of the light, I saw its face. A man in his late 50s. Gray hair neatly combed. Wire-rimmed glasses. A white coat that looked freshly pressed despite the decades of decay around it. A name badge still pinned to his chest. Dr. Samuel Hargreave, Chief of Experimental Medicine. His eyes, however, were wrong. They were too clear. Too bright. Like glass reflecting something that wasn't there. "You're not on the schedule," he said calmly. "Visiting hours ended a long time ago." My throat tightened. "This hospital is closed." He smiled faintly. "Hospitals don't close. They only change hands." I glanced back at the woman in room 214, at the rows of patients trapped in time. "They are still alive," I whispered. "They are still being treated," he corrected. "Their conditions were complicated. Time became irrelevant." "What did you do to them?" He looked almost offended. "I tried to save them." The lights flickered. For a second, I saw the ward as it must have been years ago. Doctors rushing, nurses shouting, blood on the floor, machines screaming. Then it snapped back to silence. "The trials failed," he continued softly. "But the building remembered. The walls absorbed their pain, their fear, their unfinished lives. And I stayed to make sure they were never abandoned again." "You're dead," I said. He nodded once. "So are most of my patients. But death is negotiable here." Behind him, shapes began to rise from the beds, translucent figures standing where bodies lay, their faces frozen in suffering and confusion. Some reached out. Some only watched. "They don't know they're gone," I said. "They don't need to," the doctor replied. "As long as they believe they are being treated, the hospital keeps them. Hope is a powerful anesthetic." A sudden realization struck me like ice water. The calls, the 911 calls, they're from them, aren't they? "Yes," he said. Moments of clarity. Pain breaking through the illusion. The building tries to correct it, but sometimes the outside world answers. And when someone answers, I said slowly, the hospital notices. His gaze locked onto mine. That is why you are here. The intercom crackled again. Doctor, patient in room 214 is asking to go home. The woman's voice echoed down the hall, trembling. Please? I want to go home. Dr. Hargreave turned toward the sound, his expression tightening for the first time. Excuse me, he said. I need to make my rounds. He walked away, and the lights dimmed as he passed, like life draining from the air. I followed. The stairwell to the basement was sealed with heavy steel doors, but they opened at his approach as if recognizing him. Cold air rushed up from below, carrying the smell of formaldehyde and something far older. Down there, the truth waited. Rows of rusted filing cabinets lined the walls. In the center of the room stood a circle of old hospital beds, their frames fused to the floor, their sheets stained dark with age. Symbols were carved into the concrete around them, medical diagrams twisted into something ritualistic. These were the first, the doctor said quietly. The ones who didn't survive the initial treatments. Their deaths anchored the rest. You bound them here, I said. I gave them purpose, he replied. A place to heal. Forever. And you? A pause. I became part of the system. The building groaned, as if breathing. You can't let them go, I said. You're keeping them in pain. In confusion. He turned to me, and for the first time, his calm mask cracked. If they leave, he said, there is nothing. No bodies. No memories. Just the sea of dark they were taken from. Here, at least, they are not alone. The intercom erupted with overlapping voices now, crying, screaming, calling for help. The illusion was collapsing. You're not a doctor anymore, I said. You're a warden. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, softly, and you are the visitor who will decide if this place remains forgotten, or finally remembered. The walls trembled. Lights flared. The patients' voices rose into a single, desperate chorus. They weren't asking for treatment anymore. They were asking to be released. I don't remember running. I only remember the sound, monitors flatlining one by one, the doctor's voice fading into the chaos, the building itself crying out as if something ancient and wounded was finally being forced to let go. When I burst out into the night air, the hospital went silent. No beeping. No voices. No light. By morning, the building had collapsed in on itself, as if its strength had finally given out. The official report said it was structural failure. They never mentioned the emergency calls that stopped at exactly 3:17 a.m. They never mentioned the last transmission recorded from the landline. Thank you, we're going home now. I still dream of long corridors and soft beeping in the dark. And sometimes, when my phone rings late at night, I swear I can hear the faint echo of a hospital ward, still searching for someone to answer.